Being the 14th largest GDP on the entire planet and a member of the EU, WTO, and OECD, Spain have solidified themselves as one of the most developed nations in the world. They are among the top in the world for high levels of human development and have kept a strong link to their culture and traditions. But they haven't had it easy in the last few years. The country has been hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic and now lags behind its neighbours France, Germany, and Italy. Isn't it weird that it's lagging behind despite a crazy strategic location? It's always been the star of the European continent. It's a gateway to Latin America, Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East through the Atlantic and Mediterranean. Whenever you're in Spain, you have access to every corner on the planet. Now, you're probably excited to visit Spain for their siestas and fiestas. But before you book your tickets, let's take a quick look at Spain's economy so you know what to expect when you get there. They have a diversified economy that is evenly distributed between the manufacturing and service sectors. The service sector there follows the same pattern of the majority of developed nations. Its contribution in the GDP is crazy. It makes up around 3/4 of the country's total economic output. You know what's more crazy? The importance of the service sector is especially evident in the travel and tourist industry, which has helped loads towards Spain's economic success. It's one of the most popular tourist destinations in the planet because of its vibrant cities, stunning coastline, rich cultural history, and pleasant weather. You won't get bored there. It ranks second in terms of the number of foreign tourists in 2019. It routinely ranks among the most visited countries in the world, and tourism contributes by a huge amount to the GDP and employment of the country. Hold on, you might be thinking of it as a paradise on earth? A utopia maybe? But it isn't all sunshine and rainbows. The Spanish economy does face certain difficulties. It suffered a great deal as a result of the global financial crisis of 2008, which resulted in high unemployment, a banking crisis, and a sharp correction in the housing market. And after a prolonged recovery period, Spain is currently battling the financial consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. And when we mention battling COVID-19, the tourism sector should be the first that comes to our minds, because it seems to be in a real pickle. International tourist spending there has dropped from $95 billion to a crazy $22 billion. That's more than a $70 billion drop. Maybe not the best time to be going. Nah, I'm joking. Let me assure you that Spain is recovering, so no need to postpone your trip. Strong domestic demand, improved export competitiveness, and government-initiated reforms to liberalise the economy and bolster the banking sector have all contributed to Spain's recovery. Here comes a big fat but. The unemployment rate is still high, particularly for young people, which is a serious social and economic problem. The list of challenges goes on. There are still differences in economic performance between regions, with some performing better economically than others. Madrid and Catalonia, for example. But that shouldn't really be a problem for you as a tourist unless you plan to settle there. But what puts Spain in this situation? Before we go into it, if you like this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. The narrative of Spain's economic history is one of colonialism, discovery, conquering, and transformation. Their economy has changed over the ages, going through the heyday of the Spanish Empire to its current condition of weakness. Let's travel through time and examine the significant events and developments that have influenced Spain's economic landscape. Rolling back in time, really back in time to the Age of Discovery, which included the late 15th and early 17th centuries and saw several European countries, including Spain, set out on explorations to find trade routes, territories, and sources of wealth. This is when Spain's modern commercial history began. They had the time of their lives. They were prospering for a while, but their neighbours weren't the friendliest bunch. Starting in the 17th century, the Spanish Empire began to fall. Their resources were depleted by the ongoing wars and conflicts throughout Europe and the enormous expenses of running a crazy large empire. And by the 18th century, Spain had lost a lot of its international influence in politics and the economy. War leaves no one behind. Soon after, in the 19th century, the Spanish economy did some big transformations. It was a slow industrializer, even though the Industrial Revolution had already changed most of Europe. The majority of people there were still engaged in land agriculture, maintaining the country's largely agrarian economy. Then, in the 20th century, Spanish economy conditions were dire. The infrastructure and labour force were completely destroyed during the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939, and the Francisco Franco dictatorship that followed. In 1975, particularly after Francisco Franco's death, economic reform began to take place. Finally, I was about to lose hope. Following the country's democratic transition, Trade and investment from abroad were welcomed into the economy. Their economic history underwent a dramatic shift during this time, which is referred to as the Spanish transition. Seems logical to me. Tough decisions should be taken during tough times. You can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs, no? But I always hear people say that Spain went from boom to bust. Why do they say that? The Spanish financial crisis took place in 2008 and lasted till 2014, also known as the Great Recession in Spain. Bricks and mortar were the foundation of the entire economy. It was like attending a drunken party. Many believed it would never end. The effects of that party are wearing off today. Finally. Spain's GDP is back to where it was in 2008, almost 10 years after the nation entered a severe recession. But why did all of this happen? Well, the short answer is there were conjunctural and structural elements that contributed to the banking sector's imperfections. Easy to phrase it like this, but it's not that simple. Beginning in the middle of the 1990s, Spain developed a growing number of microfinancial issues, including rapid credit expansion that was focused on the real estate industry. Savings banks began to rapidly expand from the mid-1980s, and this led to new concerns about financial stability because many of these institutions had weak governance, insufficient market discipline, and unsustainable business models. That's the recipe for financial failure. Beginning in 2009, the Spanish government progressively implemented a number of more aggressive regulatory changes and reforms. But in the end, these steps weren't enough. Deeper reform efforts only succeeded in containing the crisis in the middle of 2012, when the Spanish government publicly requested financial aid from the European authorities. Crisis, inflation, aggressive reforms, these words remind me of an issue that we shouldn't ignore. How is the Spanish construction sector behaving? How likely is it that the Spanish construction sector will be able to get through these fictitious holes? Not a great deal, given how unfavourable predictions are. However, in contrast to the previous 10-year recession, the construction sector appears to be far less vulnerable this time. We should begin with a comforting truth. The Spanish economy as a whole continues to fall below the pre-corona levels, but the Spanish construction is coming back at a quicker rate. Between the fourth quarter of 2021 and the end of 2022, there was an approximate 15,000 increase in the number of workers in Spain's construction industry. Over the past few years, the construction labour force has stayed comparatively steady. 1.28 million people worked in the construction industry in 2018. 1.28 million. That's not large. That's huge. But for the foreseeable future, the indications from the waiting list of projects aren't very clear. While civil engineering is picking up speed, new houses seem to be losing some of its traction. Is this a sign that the Spanish housing market's era of abundance is ending and that infrastructure is taking centre stage? Not really. Threats that led to the collapse of the construction sector there in 2008 aren't really relevant to Spanish developers. The industry is not very large, and recently its output has lagged much below the average for Europe. The biggest threat is inflation. Construction companies may feel happy that their order books are pretty filled and that all of their staff and machinery pool is working. But inflation is, as they say, acting as a silent killer. They might not be making much money at all if they don't keep a close check on expenses. I feel a bit bad for Spain. They seem to be hit hard by the pandemic, financial crisis, and inflation. Can anything be done to save them from anything in the future? The crisis has brought to light a number of widespread structural issues facing Spain, including low productivity growth, a high percentage of workers on temporary contracts, and persistent unemployment, especially among young people. So, there are 3 areas that could be taken into consideration for this economy to shine once again. Area number 1, digital adoption. Because countries with higher digital adoption rates were better positioned to employ e-commerce and teleworking to lessen the impact of confinement measures, the pandemic has also demonstrated the advantages of a digitized economy. We all witnessed this. Who didn't use Zoom to conduct work meetings or to attend a lecture? Personally, I believe digital solutions and teleworking are crazy important nowadays. You shouldn't ignore them. That's why Spanish government priorities include improving skills, providing assistance to job searchers, reducing temporary contracts, and accelerating the digital revolution to spur innovation and create high-quality jobs while promoting productivity development. Thanks to all these initiatives, businesses will be more resilient in adjusting to a post-pandemic environment. What a good move. You can't just leave businesses hanging in the air. This takes us to area number 2. The crisis had a different impact on different regions, which might have already made significant differences in employment, education, and income levels worse. So, keeping a flexible labour market will enable businesses to adjust to shifting economic circumstances, and restructuring successfully operating businesses that are temporarily in crisis quickly will hasten their recovery. Now, such reforms aren't for free. Money is terribly needed to make them happen. Area number 3, Spain's crazy public debt. Even before the COVID-19 issue, Spain's public finances suffered stress over the long term from an inflated public debt and a ratio of workers to pensioners that is expected to be one of the highest in the OECD by 2050. Wait a second. A country that is one of the most visited destinations on the entire planet has a high public debt. How is that? You must be confused. We feel you. Here are some numbers. In 2022, Spain's government debt was reported to be 111.60% of its GDP. From 1980 to 2022, Spain's government debt to GDP averaged 61.52% of GDP, hitting an all-time high of 120.30% of GDP in 2020. After the economy is stabilized, steps should be taken to reduce the debt to GDP ratio, including implementing a transparent and credible fiscal consolidation plan that involves all tiers of government. It's going to be super important to take appropriate and acceptable steps to guarantee the pension system's long-term financial viability. Spain hasn't had an easy economic journey, but over time, they've proven to be resilient and adaptive in the face of financial disasters. Its long history demonstrates its resilience and reform-capable nature, even as it continues to grapple with the complications of the world economy. Being able to face global economic challenges will stand Spain in good stead. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to receive more content. See you in the next video.